Hello, hello. Welcome to the PriceLabs Advanced Features webinar. I'm just going to give it probably another minute for more people to join us. As you start to join, feel free to input into the chat so that we can see where you are from and where your listings are located, as well as how many listings you have. That information helps me tailor the content of the webinar as needed. So nice to have you all with us, and we'll get started shortly. All right. We've got Brian from Arizona, Toby from Louisiana, Yancey, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, from North Carolina. Thanks for joining us today. Dina from Virginia. Cool, cool. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we will officially get started. If you were here at the very, very beginning, you heard it announced that this is being recorded. So we will be sending you a follow-up email later today after the webinar has processed the recording. We'll send a link to the recording and a link to other short pre-recorded videos that cover some subjects either in more detail than what I can cover today, or subjects that are not covered, but some of our more advanced and not as commonly used features of PriceLabs. So be on the lookout for that later today. So a little bit of admin things to cover first. Friendly reminder, please input all of your questions into the Q&A function or Q&A feature of Zoom. That makes it easier for us. Carrie, my teammate member Carrie is with us today. She's going to be helping directly answer most of those questions in that Q&A function. But I will also be able to answer some of them live as needed, depending on the type of questions that come in. So please use that function so we can keep up with those and mark those, and it helps us with one another also to know which ones I'm going to answer live and which ones she's going to answer. Cool, cool. So getting right into today's agenda. So first and foremost, I really hope that all of you have been able to attend or at least watch our basics account setup webinar. Those webinars are available every weekday, Monday through Friday, and here in the US in the afternoons, and they go over the basic steps for setting up your account. Today's webinar is not going over the basic steps of setting up your account. We're going over some of the advanced options and customization features that PriceLabs has. So if you haven't watched or attended that other webinar, the basics onboarding webinar, please go ahead and hop off the webinar for today because you will likely be pretty lost. You can always watch this recording later because I will be emailing it to everyone that registered. So yeah, really important to definitely have at least a basic understanding of how to set up your account before watching this webinar. So we are going to be going over common customization options and why you want to use them. So a big takeaway that I hope you have from today, I hope you walk away from this webinar knowing that PriceLabs has a lot of different bells and whistles. You by no means need to use all of them. You probably don't even need to use many of them. But this webinar's purpose is to just show you what is commonly used when things are customized and why not you would want to use those. Cool, cool. So we're going to be going over, to start out with, we'll start with the pricing dashboard, couple of just overviews of navigation around PriceLabs, particularly how to customize your view on that pricing dashboard page, which can be helpful. Then we're going to be going over how to streamline your setup with some bulk adjustment options. We'll review how the customization hierarchy works and some best practices for grouping listings. Grouping listings, so a lot of this, I I noticed in chat that quite a few of you only have one listing. So again, these more advanced features are more for larger accounts that have multiple listings. It's still helpful to know some of the customization options, but if you only have one listing, you don't need to know anything about groups, for example. Hierarchy can be helpful, and we'll get to that in a second, but just know that a lot of this is tailored toward larger accounts. We'll also be reviewing some advanced minimum stay options, not the basics. That's covered in that other webinar. We will review smart presets and the most used customizations, when and when not to use them. Cool, cool. All right. Perfect, perfect. All right. So I'm actually going to jump into the product first as we go over how to customize your view. So first and foremost, even before that, let's go over the navigation. So you'll see this navigation bar at the top, this black bar at the top. This is where our navigation menus live. If you ever need to get back to the pricing dashboard very, very quickly, a little shortcut is by clicking this logo here. And you'll see it should refresh. Yep. So it's refreshing because I've just clicked the PriceLabs logo. If you were on a different page of PriceLabs and you click the logo, it will take you right back here. If you are in your trial, you'll see this bar up here that tells you how much time is left of your free trial and an estimated cost at the end of your trial based on what's syncing right now. Obviously, mine's ridiculous because this is a demo account, and so I have essentially unlimited free days. Cool, cool. So these menus right here, I should mention, they are different products. So today we're only going to be focusing on the dynamic pricing menu and going to some of these different pages. When you're interested in portfolio analytics, that's our free analytic tool, your own portfolio data. You click on that menu and you can see the options here. Market research is for market dashboards and the revenue estimator pro. So again, these are the different products labeled with these different menus. I'm primarily going to be on the pricing dashboard today, as well as the customizations page for dynamic pricing. Do know that the multi-calendar, when you have multiple listings with PriceLabs, the multi-calendar is exceptionally helpful for managing your account day to day. Pricing dashboard is helpful when you're initially setting up that account. When you have a lot of listings, though, you probably want to use that multi-calendar on a day-to-day basis. Manage listings page, think of that as kind of an admin page for your listings. It's where you can edit them, hide, delete them, and even map them together. If you have a multi-unit structure, or if you have more than one PMS connected to us. And then customizations page we'll get to in a second. That's where you can manage your customizations, particularly at a higher level. And we'll really get into that today. So when it comes to customizing your view on this pricing dashboard page, so these are the initial columns that show here. These might look a little different for you. I've customized the metrics that show for my health indicators. If you want to add or remove or customize the metrics that show, those options live under the Add Metrics drop-down menu here. This is where you can add additional ones. This is where you can choose different KPIs and different timeframes to show for your health indicators. If this is too much information in terms of the number of columns that show, you can also click on row column visibility and tell us, for example, you don't want to see groups, but maybe you do want to see cities, things like that. You can toggle and see them. We'll get into the difference between groups and tags later on, etc. So very helpful tips to know to make PriceLabs look the way that you want it to look, and that's the most helpful for you for an ongoing management basis. You can also filter listings, and you can filter them by specific aspects like group or specific listings, and then you can also filter by metric as well. This little button here is to map listings together, so we won't really get into that today. But if you have a multi-unit structure, so think of this as if you're a small hotel, or if it's an apart hotel, or very cookie cutter units that live or exist in the same location, you can map them together to make sure that they share the same pricing and settings. That's what that's for. If you have multiple systems connected to us, you could also map the counterparts in the multiple softwares so that we're not double charging you for those duplicate listings. That is covered in more detail in that basics onboarding webinar that I mentioned too. Cool. Just checking on this. All right, so that's how you can customize your view from up here. And I say up here because when you want to set up an individual listing or do a deep dive into an individual listing, you can click on that listing's name or click on review prices. And what it's going to do is it will show you a detailed view of this listing. This is also customizable. So right here, so this is where you set your base price and minimum price. Again, those steps that are covered in that basics onboarding webinar. Here, this customizations tile is what I call it. This is where I can see a summary of the customizations that are in place. And when I want to edit the customizations just for this one single listing, I can click this edit button and my customization options will pop up in a separate window. This is your pricing calendar. And this is primarily what you can customize in terms of the view. So one of the things that is not by default that I've already customized is that, and you can see your customization options by clicking on this button with 3 dots right here. So these are all different options of things to show or hide. If they're checked, that means they show. If they're unchecked, then they're not showing. So one of the things, or a few things that I sort of keep checked that aren't checked by default, I will start with the fact that I have hidden the previous and next month's date. Now, by default, I believe by default, it's unchecked, and so it looks like this. And so, for example, because we are in August, not only can I see through the end of August, but I can see the very beginning of September. I personally don't like that. I like, especially if I look at September, maybe October is a little bit different. Yeah, so see, I have trouble because I see the end of September here and I see the beginning of November down here, and I personally don't like that. So I keep this checked to hide the previous and next month's dates because I want to see very clearly the beginning and end of each month, because otherwise my eyes just, I don't know, they glaze over or something. Another thing that I keep checked that is not checked by default are my notes. So by default, it would look like this. When I check this, this little box comes up at the bottom. Now, notes are important for a couple of different reasons. So when you make changes to your account, it is kept in an ongoing log that you can get to by clicking on your initials in the upper right corner and then going to log. And there's lots of different options and filtering options, but you can see the changes that you make. Now, what it doesn't tell you is the thought process behind those changes. So if you want to document the thought process behind your changes, you can do that with notes. You can click all notes, and so you could see any sort of past notes that might be here. You can edit them, pin them, even delete them. You can also add a note by clicking add. And so let's say maybe I lowered base price for lack of bookings, something like that. Click save note. And then you'll see the most recent one is here. And then again, when I click on all notes, I can see the other ones too, the older ones as well. And now by default, it tells you the day when that note was made and the time. And if you edit it, it will also update that. So a little cool thing about notes. And again, I keep that checked personally, but you can uncheck it if you don't want it, or not check it if you don't want to see it. A couple other options. We'll start from the top now. Full calendar view, full year calendar. So when I check this box, I will now see at the bottom below this pricing calendar, your full year calendar. And what's cool about this is that it gives you a bird's eye view of the availability as well as the market demand. So for unavailable dates, they are grayed out. And then for the demand, the changes and fluctuations in demand, you see they are in different colors, and you are able to see those colors throughout the year. Now, if those colors aren't helpful to you, if you find that they're to gradient, if you have any issues with color blindness, we now have an option right here that says enhanced color contrast. You can check this box, and instead of a gradient color difference, it's very distinct colors that are easier for individuals to see if they're colorblind. And you have the key right here that tells you the difference in the colors and what they mean. And again, same sort of color key for this pricing calendar as well as the full year calendar. Next, highlight dates with overrides. This one I also think is not checked by default. So what's helpful with this is that now date specific overrides, let's say, I'm concerned that the next week doesn't have occupancy for this particular listing. I can click and drag to highlight all of these dates, and I can either set a fixed price or I can say, hey, since they haven't booked yet, I just want to drop it 10% more and click add. So that's going to show up as a date specific override just for this one listing, just on this listing level. Now it could be possible that and we'll get into the hierarchy in a second, but I might have an account level date specific override or a group level date specific override. And I would need to know if those exist or not when I create a listing level override, because what that would do, like maybe I've already dropped that rate a certain percentage on a higher level, and then I create this, well, I need to know that because it's going to kick out that change that I've made at the higher level based on the hierarchy. So that is why I keep this box checked. Now, I'm not sure if I have higher level. I don't see any. What I'm going to do, for example purposes, I'm going to come to the customizations page, and I'm going to, this puts me at the account level. I'm going to go to my property management system for this listing, click on account calendar, and I'm going to also highlight that same week. Let's say at the account level, I've dropped it 15%, click add. So now when I go back to the pricing dashboard, again, I can either do this to get to the pricing dashboard or click on the logo in the top left corner, go back to Oleander Dream, save and refresh to get those higher level changes to implement and show up on the calendar. So now what you'll see is this little caret. I called it caret. And when I hover over the price point, I see the tooltip. And the tooltip, if I didn't have this one, so this is all about the hierarchy we're about to go into. So now when I hover over, one second, get save and refresh so it'll update. Now you'll see that in about the middle of this tooltip, it says date override and it says account rather than listing. And it says that I have a 15% drop here for this week at the account level. And if I were to click and highlight this, put this back in place, what you'll see, again, save and refresh to get the rates to recalculate. What you're going to see when I hover over that tooltip is now I have kicked out that account level override. Only the listing level override is being applied for that 10% drop. So that is why I keep that option checked. And again, we'll get into that in a little more detail. Now, show booking info, show unavailable, and show events, I believe are all checked by default. What those are, you'll see down here. So if I had real bookings, which I don't, because this is a dummy listing, it doesn't exist in real life, and I don't have real bookings on it. If I did have real bookings, my unavailable days that are grayed out, I would be able to see which days are check-in days with this gray square with a key in it, and which days are just the other booked days of that reservation or any reservation by just this gray square. Any unavailable days, so if I had an unbookable gap, which I don't see right now in this particular listing. Yeah, I don't think I have enough fake listing or fake bookings. But if I did have an unbookable gap, I would see this red square with an exclamation point, like a warning sign, um, indicating that it is not bookable. And then events, you'll see here, because this is Labor Day weekend, events are marked with this pink star emblem. And you'll see those throughout on different days, right? So this is Columbus Day, or yeah, I think it's a different word now, but it's Columbus Day. I'll just say Columbus Day weekend, and other special events that pop up, Halloween, et cetera, et cetera. So if that's too much information, if you don't want to see all of those symbols, then just come here and you can, like, for example, you'll see those disappear, etc. It'd be the same thing, but the other ones aren't showing, so I'm not going to worry about it. So that's how you can customize your view. Very important to know, so that first and foremost, whenever you see something like this in PriceLabs, this is a tiny but important menu that you may want to check out and see what the options are. So takeaway number one for this part of the webinar, right? You see a button with 3 dots on it, click it and see what different options there are, okay? And ways that you can customize your view. Personally, I think more than anything else, I like to hide the last and next month. That just makes it so much cleaner, I think, to have that hidden. So just my personal preference. Just checking in. I don't see any questions. So just moving along. Again, as you have questions, just input them into the Q&A function. Use the chat to let me know if I'm going too fast. Any sort of feedback like that. I will keep an eye on the chat as well, and Carrie will help me too. Cool, cool. So if there's no questions on that, now we're going to get into the customization hierarchy, which I have touched on a little bit. So I am going to navigate within the product. I'm going to go back to that customizations page. So here you will see that when you first land on this page, you've got a few different tabs. We're going to start by talking about the customization tab. This is where you can edit customizations at different levels. You start on the accounts tab, which means if you click the edit button here, you'll see a customization window pop up. Any customization that I were to adjust here affects the entire account if there isn't another customization at a lower level for the same exact option. So in this deck, I have a really good example chart. So the last minute prices, orphan day prices, and minimum stay rules are some of the most commonly used customizations. And this is showing you what happens when these customizations are turned on at different levels and which level applies. So with this last minute prices example, I have it turned on at the account level and the group level. What that means is that for the group where this is turned on, only the group level customization gets applied. The easier way to remember this is the more specific you get, listing is more specific than group is more specific than account. When you get more specific, that is what is applying, not the more general setting or general level. So orphan day prices in this example, if only at the account level I have it customized, then the account level customization gets applied. For minimum stay rules, this one's a little bit trickier. So minimum stay has different options within the overall option of minimum stay. It is an all or nothing thing. So that's what this example is trying to point out. So let's say at the account level for minimum stay, I have a default rule and I have an orphan day rule. At the group level, I have a default last minute and far out rule. And on the listing level, I have just default and last minute. Well, because it's all or nothing, because I am doing anything with minimum stay at a listing level, neither the group level nor account level gets applied. So I'll show you that in product to add some more context to it. So now this is similar with date specific overrides, this hierarchy. That example chart just shows you the customizations. Similar sort of thing with date specific overrides, which I showed you with this particular example, right? They were the same days, and then the listing level, because I used the same days, but a different date specific override function, it kicked out the account level date specific override. So the way I'm going to show you this, so like if you want to edit account level customizations, you stay on the accounts tab. If you want to edit, and I'll show you how to create groups and assign listings to groups later, but this is the group level. You would click edit here to edit the customizations for this group, or group calendar to edit the date specific overrides for this group. Listings, you can access listing customizations here by clicking this edit button. This customization window pops up. This is for this particular listing, Edgewater 802. Anything here is only applying to Edgewater 802 because this is the listing level for this one specific listing. There's a new view now that can be super helpful if you're using customizations at different levels, and it's table view up in this upper right-hand corner. And so what you can see here, so for the time being, none of these fake listings are assigned to groups. So you'll just see a bunch of green check marks here. If I go back to accounts and I click, now to edit them, you can click this pencil icon from the table view. So just as an example, I'm going to do minimum stay, and I've got some old settings in here that I'll probably just keep. I'm trying to see what my default should be. I think it should be probably 2 and 3. I'm going to click Save Changes. So now when I come to listings, so this is interesting, nothing changed. Nothing changed because I have listing level, where is it, minimum stay for all of my active listings. So now if I come to, say, Edgewater here, and I turn off this minimum stay, save changes, now you'll see that because I've removed the listing level, now account level is being applied, and it's telling me that. So that's a little handy view to keep in mind as you go on and get more comfortable with customizations. I see some chats, so I'm going to look at this real quick. We've got some resources. Helpful resources have been put into the chat, so please take a look at that. Those resources can help supplement what I'm talking about today. And saw that someone asked about the recording, and yes, we will be sending that in a follow-up email later today. Cool. Okay, so I've touched on the hierarchy and how it works, both for date-specific overrides and customizations. I will send you a video that adds a little more detail to that. So just keep in mind there's going to be a video in the follow-up email too. I do also want to show you this real quick. So for groups, if you want to create a group, you come here, click Create Group, and then let's say I'm going to call it condos. Yeah, I don't have a condos one yet. So I'm going to click Create. Now, all that does is it creates a bucket, and we'll go over some best practices for considerations for a group structure in a second, but I want to show you the hierarchy with this real quick. So I have created this group, but no one's been assigned to this group yet. The only thing you do here on the customizations page is create the group, and then either create date-specific overrides through group calendar, or edit and add customizations to this group. Now, you probably saw when I clicked on that, this is a reminder, hey, there's no syncing listings in this group, just letting me know. To assign listings to groups, a couple different pages where you can do that from. There is a reminder at the top of this groups tab that says you can add your listings to a group from Manage Listings page, and it actually has a link to the Manage Listings page. So when you come here, the column around the middle is where customizations group is. And so now I can come here, and if I know that there are multiple listings I want to add to a group, I can check all of those listings. I can come down here, click Assign Group, and then it reminds me which listings I'm assigning. And then from this drop-down menu, I have a bunch of different groups I can choose from. So for right now, I'm just going to choose beach to assign all of these listings to a beach group. Click update. So now they are all assigned. I'm going to click clear selection to uncheck those boxes. And then for these other two listings that are syncing, I'm actually going to show you the other way for these other two. So you can also just click on nothing selected in this drop-down menu. And for this one, I have an urban group, so I'm going to select that one. Same for my Austin one. So I've assigned them to the urban group. So you can do this from the Manage Listings page. You can also assign groups from both the multi-calendar page and the pricing dashboard. So for multi-calendar, now multi-calendar, I don't have time to get into nitty-gritty detail on this, but like I said, check it out. Check out some of our additional resources on multi-calendar. But one of the columns, which I made sure is visible for my multi-calendar, is groups. And you can just assign it, same sort of process. Drop down menu, select what you want. You can also do this. You can't do that from this page. Sorry, forget I said that. But you can assign from the drop down menu here, or from pricing dashboard if you want to go one by one, or let's say you create your group structure all at one time from that customizations page. And then as you are maybe setting up other things listing by listing, you want to assign them listing by listing. So let's say maybe you're going through and setting your base prices, setting your minimum prices. Over on the far right of this pricing calendar, you'll see group customization here, and this is where you can select and assign the group from the pricing dashboard. But when you want to do it in bulk, easiest place to do that is the Manage Listings page. So one thing to note, now that I have this listing in the beach group, over here in this customizations tile, it will tell me, for example, so I've got this listing level minimum stay already assigned to this listing. But let's say I'm going to come here, I'm going to turn this off. It reminds me that, hey, do you definitely want to do that? Click Save Changes, and what you should see is that it'll change to the group. Yes. So now in my customizations tile that summarizes my customizations, it's pointing out that the minimum stay is being applied at the group level, and it explains or lists the settings from the group. So those are ways that you can assign listings to groups, and you can see what is being applied, what customizations are being applied at which level. I know that's a lot of information. So any questions on that? Just general hierarchy, how to see where like which level customizations are being applied at. All right, cool. Do let us know if you have questions. All right, so now that we've talked a little bit about groups, let's talk about group structure best practices. So try to remember that groups are not simply for labeling. We have something called tags, which I'm going to come back here. I'm actually going to go to the Manage Listings page to show you this. Tags are labels. Tags can help you filter by specific characteristics that don't need a group because they don't need different customizations or different settings. But say, for example, so some of the examples I have in my tags here in the middle, private pools. I want to know which listings have private pools, but I don't need a group for private pools because they don't need separate customizations or separate settings. But I do want to know which properties have pools so that I could potentially just filter and look at those listings, or potentially run reports under portfolio analytics just on those listings. If I want to compare, like, how are my listings with private pools performing versus listings that don't have private pools? That can come up sometime with owners if they want to know if it's worth investing in a private pool. Other ones I have, let's say you have an owner that has multiple properties with you. A lot of times that's a very special relationship. You need to make sure that that owner's happy. And so I have a tag for Mr. Smith because he's got 3 properties with me. I want to be able to filter and hone in and really pay attention to his properties. I want to be able to report on just his properties. So it's important for me to have a label or a tag that can do that. Yeah, and you'll see, so I have private pool and then I have pool like a community pool. And sometimes that's important to know the difference between those. Beachfront versus non-beachfront, things like that. So that's how I'm using tags. I've seen tags used in a number of different ways. So we show you bedroom count here, but I actually have quite a few customers that use tags to designate bedrooms. Bedrooms are also already a filter option and also already like a reporting option. So, but for whatever reason, I still have plenty of customers. I just happen to notice that use that. So know that we do already have filters for bedrooms, but if that's helpful for you to have a labeling system for bedrooms within tags, then feel free to do that. So groups, remember, think of those, or the way I think of those are buckets of similar types of properties that need to share customizations or share minimum length of stay rules. So so it's important to know, like, what can you manage at a group level, right? So discounting strategies, seasonal or day of week trends, minimum prices, even particularly advanced minimum price settings, date specific overrides, minimum stay rules, like I mentioned. So you can think of the group structure and common things that are common listings that need to share these types of settings are based on location, based on listing type. So small or large, house or condo, apartment or house, hotel or house, things like that. Minimum stay restriction. At a very bare minimum, that's usually what I recommend for customers. If you have a certain group of properties that are very strict on their minimum stay, have them in their own group. And then the others that are maybe more flexible with their minimum stay, they can be in another group, or they could be in groups based on a different structure that's needed, like location. So here's some examples. So it could be as broad as just Seattle versus another city, or it could be neighborhood. Say you have Seattle properties that are in different neighborhoods. So Seattle downtown versus Seattle uptown or Seattle suburb. Size, Seattle downtown 1 bedroom versus Seattle downtown 3 bedrooms. Type, Seattle downtown 1 bedroom luxury, Seattle downtown 1 bedroom economy. Things like that. Minimum stay is another one. It timed out on me, so maybe I'm talking too much, but hopefully that gives you a general idea. When I look at my groups, so my fake listings are beach listings, and then I have some urban market listings. So usually I just stick with like beach or urban, but I have some others that are specific to certain buildings or condos. If I had any monthly rentals, so if you have any monthly or what we call midterm rentals, where they're, in most cases, you want at least 28, 29, or 30 days, you probably want them in a separate group. Not only do you want your minimum stay to be different, but there are other things like you probably want to turn off last minute discounts. Orphan day discounts usually don't make sense for monthly rentals, far out prices, usually things like that. We'll get into some of these different customization options in a second, but if you have short-term and midterm, you probably want to have them separated into different groups. Cool. So just checking the chat, friendly reminder, if you have questions, please, please, please use the Q&A feature, not the chat, for questions. So it's a lot easier for us to keep up with them. When I see the chat, I'm thinking you're giving me feedback that I'm going too fast, or maybe I'm going in and out if I have bad connection. If it's a question about how to use PriceLabs, please use the Q&A function. All right. So now we've talked about grouping best practices. I've showed you how to, just looking at my notes, showed you how to assign. Oh, now here's a cool little shortcut that you may want to know. So I showed you how to create a group from this button here. If your groups have certain things in common that you want to clone or copy from one group to the next. You have a shortcut to create a group by cloning an existing group. Again, check out these buttons with 3 dots. So click on that. You have an option to clone the group. You can even delete like old groups if you want to as well. And a few other options if you want to sync now, like a manual sync right this second for this entire group, you can click sync now, show overrides, refresh listings in group. That's like a save and refresh for all of the listings in this group. If you want to show listings in the group, this is a shortcut now here. You can even download a CSV of prices for this group too. So those are some cool options. Like I said, make sure and check out those buttons with 3 dots on them. All right. So now going into advanced minimum stay options. So I mentioned that we were going to start by just looking at this customizations tab. Now that we're talking about advanced minimum stay options, I am going to show you profiles. So I'm going to click on profiles. Minimum stay profiles are an advanced option within PriceLabs that allow you to have a rule, a set of cascading minimum stay rules that can apply to multiple listings, multiple groups, even the account, or you can use these profiles to have different rules apply to different times of year in your custom seasonal profile. So I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of how to create just the standard min stay rules. When you click on create profile, you'll name it. And so maybe this one, I've got a lot of different options. So I'll just do a 2-night rule. I like to name them based on what the rule is. But you could also name it if you want to apply it to a specific time of year, you could name it, and you might see it's kind of grayed out over on the left. I've got one for summer, one for winter, spring break. So it could be indicating the time of year or the type of rule it is. I really think it's the most self-explanatory when it's the type of rule that it is. So 2-night minimum. And then again, I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of all of the different options here or the basic options, but because it's 2-night minimum, I'm going to make sure my default rule is, as the name says, it's that 2-night minimum, both on weekdays and weekends. And then let's say for far out, maybe I want to start with 2 and 3. When it's beyond 60 nights, I want another level of 3 and 4, beyond 90. And then maybe last minute, I do 1 and 2 within 30 nights. And then orphan gaps, I'll accept anywhere from a 1 to a 3-night orphan gap at any time. So these are the basic rules, but I've created a special minimum stay profile that can be applied elsewhere. Also want to just lightly touch, there are some more advanced options. I will send you videos that help understand the adjacent options here. Lowest minimum stay allowed. I would be careful with using that in a profile. I think it's better to use like at a listing level to make sure that for this, now you could do this for this set of rules and just say, hey, I want to make sure that the weekend never goes below 2. In case I accidentally do something, it will not go below 2 on weekends. You could do that. Think of it as like a safety minimum. Just be careful if you've got profiles applying to different times of year. This will not always be active if you're only applying it at this profile. So be a little careful with the lowest min stay allowed if you are using it. So let's say that this is my profile. I'm going to click Save Profile. So now I have a couple of different options. If I, let's say here, at the account level, I'm going to go into Edit to edit customizations. When you leave it on custom, you create the rules from scratch right here in your Stay Restrictions tab. Or if you have a lot of profiles that exist, you can click here and you can select that profile you want to apply. So let's say maybe I want to apply that 2-night minimum profile that I just created. And then you can click Save Changes to get that applied to the account level. Same with groups. You could potentially apply multiple profiles to multiple groups. So same sort of thing, you click into edit, and then from here, now I'm already using a profile, but let's change it because this one's not even active anymore. It's been archived. Let's say now I want my 4-night profile for this group, save changes. That's how you apply it. And same sort of listings. If you're in that customizations window, which I'll just show you from here, same sort of thing. Turn the switch on, and then this one's already selected, but you can select a different one, right? So another cool option, I'm going to go back to groups for a second and stick to my beach group. You can apply those profiles to different times of year, particularly beach markets. It's very common that we have longer rules in the peak season. We can get away with requiring a longer minimum length of stay in peak season, and in the off season have something shorter. So you can use the custom seasonal profile, which you can access by clicking edit. And then because this is a seasonal market, it will live under smart presets, which we'll get into more detail in a second. I can click to turn on custom seasonal profile and say, for example, now I'm actually going to change this. And I am going to actually do something different for winter. Right? So for winter for us, actually, I'm going to do March, first 10 days of March as winter. And I'm going to select a shorter minimum length of stay requirement. So I'm going to select 3-night minimum, because for this particular group, the rest of the year has a 7-night minimum. And in the off season, I'm going to want a shorter rule. So that's how you can use that. And like I said, we'll get into custom seasonal profile in a little more detail. That's how you use min stay profiles. So the next thing I want to talk about in more detail are smart presets. So smart presets, which I just touched on briefly here, they are a filtered view of customizations. We have a lot of bells and whistles, and our intention behind smart presets are to show only the applicable and most commonly used customizations based on your market and based on your listing type. Now, listing type you'll see up here, which for me, I've selected short-term rentals. And I've told PriceLabs I've used dynamic pricing before, so that will also affect the tips in particular that show for each of these customizations. The way that you control the options that show here, so for example, I have told PriceLabs I have both short-term and midterm rentals. Usually, depending on how long you've had your account, when you first start your account, you should be prompted to tell us what kind of listings you have. But if you don't see that prompt or never saw that prompt, you can click on your initials in the top right corner and then click on settings. And then from here, should be under advanced settings, right here in the middle. Let us know more about you. Click on edit, and this is where you tell us what type of listings you have, and this is what's going to affect the options that show up under smart presets. Short-term rentals are the ones that offer nightly or weekly rentals. Midterm, that's when it's a few weeks or longer. In most cases, it's going to be a month for midterm rentals. Multi-units, I mentioned very briefly about mapping for multi-units, but multi-units would be like a small hotel, resorts that have very cookie cutter, similar properties that need to share settings and or share pricing, hostels, things like that. So just to show you how this changes, I'm going to check this box. I'm also going to change up here to say, no, I haven't used dynamic pricing before, just so you can see the change. Now, because I've selected multi-rentals or multi-units, these options now show us just for our data purposes so that we know what kind of multi-units you have. So let's say that for me, it's going to be more of a service apartment, apart hotel type of situation, not a group hotel, like a chain, not an independent hotel, hostel, or this is, I would say resorts. Think of this also as resorts. So I'm gonna click done. And now, let's go back to the pricing dashboard. I'll just show you. from the listing level. Customizations. So I'm going to go back to Oleander. I'm going to click back. Now I'm going to click here to get into customization since I'm at the pricing dashboard. And under smart presets, you'll see this has changed. So now you'll see 3 different options here. So this, you can toggle back and forth between the type of property at the listing level or groups or even account to see different smart presets. And this you'll see has changed from yes to no. So that's how smart presets work. And it's the intention behind smart presets. So all of the customizations I'm going to go over in detail, I'm going to stick to smart presets because my intention with this webinar is to inform you of the most commonly used customizations. That is exactly what smart presets is. So if you want to look and explore, and I'll send you some videos for some sort of edge case customizations, meaning not commonly used, but if you want to know how they work, they live under more customizations. So you can click on more customizations and click around and see what you see. So general, by and large, general is going to be the things that are already included in the algorithm. So even though the switch is off, there's a default setting and it's explained here. It's already included in the algorithm. You only switch it on if you want to do something different than the default. Seasonal and minimum prices, this is where you'll see that seasonal profile. Also, seasonality can be customized to be more or less aggressive or high or low. And advanced minimum price settings as well live here. And then advanced customizations, this is more edge case stuff. You can tell us how you define weekends. If you don't define Friday and Saturday as a weekend, let us know. Turn the switch on and select what you define as weekends. Demand factor sensitivity, which is also under smart presets, so we'll get into that, etc. So again, I'll send you some videos. Particularly, I think I have a video on rounding. Smoothing, unless you have at least a 7-night minimum, ignore smoothing. What that does is it smooths the price. It takes the average price each week and just sets that average for the entire week, and you just tell us how you want the week to work, but that will really mess things up if you don't have at least a 7-night minimum. It's helpful if you have like a midterm rental. It can be helpful for that, but otherwise just ignore smoothing. A lot, for whatever reason, I have customers that like to play around with making rates look pretty and consistent. Cool. So going back to smart presets again to focus on the most commonly used customizations. I know I only have 10 minutes left, but this will still cover the basics of how to understand these features. Last minute prices. So with Hyperlocal Pulse, and if you're new, you're automatically on Hyperlocal Pulse algorithm. If you have been with us for years and have not switched yet, this will look different. So for Hyperlocal Pulse, we now have market-driven last-minute pricing by default. And for each listing, it will explain what that last-minute pricing is. It will look different potentially from listing to listing and from day to day or even week to week because it's market dependent. If you want to do something different than this default, turn this switch on and tell us what you want to do. You can have a fixed price, that's a specific dollar amount that you hit within your defined last minute window. That means for the next 7 days, every day will be $100 if I do this option. Or you have either percent flat or percent gradual, or even turning off last minute adjustment. So if you don't want any last minute adjustment, turn it off this way, which is a little counterintuitive. You've turned the switch on to tell us to turn it off. Percent flat, if I did a 5% flat discount over 7 days, every day for the next 7 days, that's including today, will be discounted 5%. If I did percent gradual, and in this case, let's do maybe a 10% over 10 days, that 10% is divided over 10 days. Today, same day bookings would get a 10% discount. Tomorrow, they would get a 9% discount. The next day, 8%, the next day, 7%, etc. So it divides it and gradually increases to a maximum of a 10% discount. When this switch is off and you see this described here, all of our market-driven discounting is a gradual discount. So it's that 27 in this example, 27% divided over 35 days, which is very messy math. But just know that it caps out at 27% and gradually decreases over 35 days. Orphan day prices, by default, that's a 20% discount to gap nights of 1 or 2 nights in length. If you want to do something different than that, or turn it off, turn the switch on, select no orphan day discount if you want to turn it off, or no orphan day adjustment. Custom orphan day prices, leave it on that if you want to do something different, and click add. Again, you could do a fixed dollar amount for a very specific price point, or you could do a percentage change. Now, this percentage change could be a discount or a premium. So I'm just going to stick with discount because that's most common. I think that premiums, now there's some use cases for premium, but just proceed with caution if you use premium. You can define gaps of different lengths. So instead of just limiting it to 1 and 2 night gaps, maybe I want to do anywhere from 1 to 3. That's how you define the length of the gap there. And then you could apply it only within a certain booking window. So let's say I don't want to discount the gaps unless they're within the next 60 nights. And that's how you affect the booking window. You could also have multiple layers if you want to. So let's say maybe, let's say maybe we'll do 1 and 2, and then I could do a different, say maybe just a very small, like 2% and 5% for these longer gaps, something like that. And maybe for these longer gaps, I always want them to be open. Or I'm sorry, I always want them to be discounted. 999 means affinity, like I'm not restricting it based on booking window. That's how you can do that. Custom far out prices, similar to last minute prices with HLP, it is market driven. If you want to do something different, if you want to have a very specific premium far out, or even turn it off, again, flip this switch. You could do no far out prices, or you could say, hey, again, sort of the same, it's the same concept for percent gradual versus percent flat. If I did percent flat, you tell us what is your far out booking window. And so maybe for me, it's 6 months, 180 days. And I want to have a minimal premium, just a 5% premium added. You could do that. Percent gradual is a little bit complicated because you tell us what the time frame is for a gradual premium. And usually you would want it to be probably more than 5%, like maybe 15, and how long you want that to be gradually applied. And let's say after 6 months, apply it for maybe the next 6 months. And then after that year, roughly a year, 360 days, then it's a flat 15% premium for every day beyond 360. A little more complicated. I generally would say if you're wanting to customize this, if this is confusing, stick with percent flat and do something that's very straightforward. Start with that first. But the market driven should be a good approach if you're not sure. The only thing I would say is usually if I see a customer not using that far out default, it's just to make it less aggressive and be something minimal, like 5 to 10%. All right. Occupancy-based adjustments. So we have a default profile already here. If you want to see that default profile, flip the switch to just click edit profile and see what it's doing. So this is looking at each listing's occupancy, calculating that listing's occupancy over chunks of time. Day ranges are up here, and further optimizing the rate. Negative numbers meaning we're decreasing that rate. Positive numbers meaning we're adding more premium to the rate. So let's say the market's doing really well, but this listing's not. Over the next 60 days, we want to make sure we're backing off of our recommended rate. So this is what it's doing by default. If it's less than 10% occupied over the next 2 weeks, 0 to 15 days from today being 0, we're going to decrease our recommended rates by 15%. That's what that negative 15 means. On the flip side, if it's very booked, if it's between 61 and 70% occupied over 31 to 60 days, we increase the rate by 5%. So that's what the positive numbers mean versus the negative numbers, premium versus discounts. I don't really think about them as discounts. I just kind of think about them as a better rate for me because my listing's not very occupied. We have a couple of different preset options I encourage you to check out, in particular, the aggressive profile. So if you have a property that's struggling to book, check this one out. We even have super aggressive discounting. So if it's really struggling, try this one. It's a little more aggressive than the aggressive profile, and it has no premium added to it for the high end of occupancy. And I know I'm running over in time, so I appreciate anyone that's still here. Anyone that's left, they'll get the recording of the full webinar. Cool, cool. All right, so custom seasonal profile, once we get to demand factor, we'll be done. So just a couple more things. Custom seasonal profile, I very briefly touched on it, but the intention behind custom seasonal profile, and you can always hover over the tip to explain what we recommend. So for example, for this tip, it says, hey, we're already automatically adjusting the rates seasonally. So don't worry about doing that. What you could do though, is adjust the minimum price for higher demand times, have a higher minimum price, or as I already sort of showed you very briefly, minimum stay rules. So I'm going to edit profile and I'm getting rid of all of this old work. First and foremost, if you do want to make rate changes like to your minimum rate, the profile will force you to choose between a percentage change and a fixed price. When you're at the listing level like this, it makes sense to have fixed price, a very specific price point. If you are creating and using this profile at a group level or even account level, keep it on percentage. I think that it's not even an option at account level to have a fixed price. It might be an option at the group level because there are some cases like a resort. If you've got a unit type all in one group, they may share the pricing. And so you could potentially have the same fixed minimum price for that group. But just proceed with caution again for this option. I'm going to change back to fixed, and that we now have very clear warnings that pop up to make sure you know, because that's was a common mistake. Now you can have as many seasons or as few as you need. So let's say maybe in this case, I only need winter. And this is, I should also mention, so we can't split the calendar year. So if you're winter, like it is for me in Panama City, if it starts in October, late October, and goes through early March, you can't have a winter defined like that. You have to have one at the beginning of the year and one at the end of the year because you can't split the calendar year. So in this case, I'm actually going to call it winter 1. I'm going to start with January 1 and go through, like I said, probably first week or so of March. And for this particular case, I could have a different minimum price if I want to, but I've set my minimum based on off season, my default minimum over here. So I don't need to change the minimum price for winter, but I do probably want that shorter minimum profile. Now I could have a summer profile, and I'm going to just say May 25th through August 3rd. And for this one, maybe I want an elevated minimum price, such as $350. That's how you can do that, but I don't need to change my minimum rule. So I'm not going to check a profile here. And then I could add another winter here, define it for the end of the year, and have that min stay profile selected. So that's how you use that custom seasonal profile. Make sure you click finish profile. Now you don't need to save changes after each change within customizations. Just make sure before you navigate away, you click save changes and it will save everything you've done. But you can navigate between tabs and it's going to hold your work while you're here, which is pretty cool, I think. Last but not least, again, thanks for staying a little past the end of the hour. Demand factor sensitivity. If you are new to dynamic pricing, if it's a brand new thing for you, and if it's selected up here as not having used dynamic pricing before, you will see that we do recommend starting with demand factor on low. Demand factor is how responsive our algorithm is to fluctuations in occupancy in the market, future occupancy. Seasonal and day of week trends come from past trends, those repeated trends, those more solid, it's more solid in the data, right? We know what's happened in the past, and that's how we determine seasonal and day of week trends. For demand factor sensitivity, this is what creates the differences day to day. So if you see grayed out here, like why Sunday's 355 and this next Monday's 315, but this Sunday is 355, the Sunday previously is 270. It's one of the factors that goes into how there's unique rates for most every single day. So demand factor, if you're new to dynamic pricing, when you have it on low, so I'm going to change it to low from recommended. Recommended is the default setting for it. That is an overall more conservative approach to your rates. It will dampen high rates, so we won't go quite as aggressive in high demand times. To a small degree, your low rates will also not be quite as low. So we're not as aggressive in low demand times either. Aggressive meaning how, we're trying to get the highest dollar amount possible in high demand times. And we're trying to be very competitively low in low demand times to get you bookings in those low demand times. But that can be a lot to get used to when you haven't used dynamic pricing before. So start out on low, click Save Changes, and then it will overall dampen some of these prices. So this went down just slightly. This one went down just slightly. I can actually see here 373. Now in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see price with default customizations. If demand factor wasn't on low, it would be 387. So that's how you kind of can see the differences in the rates. So I know I've run over in time again. Thank you for everyone that's hung on for the rest of the webinar. Yes, we will definitely be sending the recording. Thanks to Carrie. She left because I went over in time and she had another call. But thanks to Carrie for helping answer some questions. I hope you are walking away with some helpful takeaways. I'll send the recording so you can watch it again, but also take a look at those short videos I'm going to send in the follow-up email as well. They're going to cover some of the more complicated concepts that perhaps I didn't touch on with enough detail, and some of the edge case customization possibilities. So you can kind of explore and see what those are all about. So again, thank you for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.